YouTubers or streamers would come up to us and give us their cards, and we would always take those cards back and put them on a spreadsheet. And then when the time came, basically anybody with like 5,000 or more subscribers was sort of just an arbitrary cutoff that we did, and we sent out keys to anybody that was above that line. So we definitely did do some outreach, but it was only a couple dozen. And then we have a sort of a press email address, and people can request keys through that. And so like we definitely have provided a bunch of keys that way, but it was very sort of hit and miss.
We were also lucky that we just like, we knew quite a few games press people from just like parties that we'd been to at GDC and stuff like that. So it was just like being around for so long and like, you know, just trying to be nice to people and like make friends. Like we ended up like much better connected at the time that we released and were working on this game than we ever were for any previous projects.
But a lot of that came from having made King of Loathing and having, I don't know if cachet is the right word, but like having something that was recognizable. So the success is make a game, release it, wait 15 years, make a second game, that one will do really well.
Wait 15 years. Okay, so I had a question about
Can I piggyback on your prior question? What question?
More land like, where did that come from?
There's a whole backstory. That was all riff. There's a whole backstory that's not why are clowns the more land? Clowns are like just the like protrusion into our dimension of some hell being that are fighting the cows. The only reason that they're here is because the cows are here. I remember that part.
I think part of it was like, oh, so there's rodeos. We don't really want rodeos. Rodeo clowns are kind of weird. So just figuring out how they work.
We can get away with this because the game is so stupid. Like we have kind of ideas about the underlying lore, but they're really only there as a sort of marginal guide for us to mostly pervert and subvert, because nobody cares if it's internally consistent. Like it is as internally consistent as it needs to be in order for us to make like fun callback jokes or set up some funny consistent trope. But
clowns are super creepy in KOL, and it's like it definitely follows that lore. There's seals are demonic creatures in KOL, and cows are demonic creatures in West of Loathing, and like it's probably basically the same deal, right?
I did have a question, but I have to remember what we were talking about before that question. Oh, okay. What were we talking about before that? Yes. So, there's been a lot of controversy with bigger studios. Yeah, I mean, what do you guys feel about people streaming? I mean, you guys have obviously a content-driven game. Do you feel negatively about people streaming it?
We assumed that nobody was going to stream it or that it was unstreamable because it was so writing heavy. It turns out that that's not true.
Apparently, like the people, like Markiplier especially, like he likes not having to come up with the stuff that he says every minute of those videos, right? So if there's writing that's actually funny, that like he can do in funny voices and react to, like his audience likes watching him laugh at stuff, and so like if there's a game that's mostly just funny stuff, like turns out that's like exactly right up his alley. I mean, my feeling about game streaming has always kind of been like I always just assumed that it wouldn't intersect with our careers in a meaningful way, because we just didn't imagine that we would ever make anything that was real streamable, right? And when it did, it was like, well, I mean, there's a bunch of people who like watch that. I mean, certainly like 10 times as many people watch that Markiplier video as bought West of Loathing ever, right? 30 times as many? Okay. But I don't know, I think it would be silly to think like, oh, well, that's 3 million sales we didn't get because people just watched somebody else play the game. Because those people are gonna buy it, Like they're there to watch him. They're not there to watch this game. Like, and
so then you may converted some.
Yeah, exactly. Too. And it's like if somebody does someday when it goes on sale, maybe somebody will be like, oh yeah, that's that game Markiplier played that I saw. I'll buy that for $4 or whatever, and that's $4 we never would have gotten otherwise. It's like, I mean, I think also like when I was I'm glad to have mellowed out a little bit about that idea of piracy before we ever like made a game that was possible to pirate, because it's like I could sit there and just be really pissed off that like 25% of the people that are playing West of Loathing have pirated it, but like being mad wouldn't help. Like we can't do anything about it, you know? We're not going to attach like horrible DRM to it that makes it a pain for people who did buy it. Like it's just like, it just can't happen. Like, you know, I'm glad we made something that was popular enough that people wanted to steal it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, you know, it was far more common without Steam. You know, we still pirate things. When Steam came along, a lot of those games I enjoyed very much, I've purchased so that to support the developers. So there might be a couple games that I absolutely love that have 0 hours of playtime on Steam. I purchased them.
Yeah. Yeah, there was that when when Ron Gilbert did the Kickstarter for Thimbleweed Park. There was a tier of the Kickstarter that was just like, I'm giving you extra money because I feel guilty because I pirated Monkey Island or Maniac Mansion in the 80s.
There was a story that the Shovel Knight developers also had when they were like boothing at one of the conventions, where someone walked up to one of the guys, gave him $15 and said, I pirated the game, I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness!
There was I just read a news article about a study that piracy increases sales. So
yeah, I've seen
EU
those. Those actually have been around for those studies.
And like it's probably the same with streaming. Like that's the whole thing, right? So streaming is technically violating our copyright, right? And everybody who makes games and allows streams of those games is sort of just being like, okay, we're doing this because we assume that this is a net positive for us.
And nobody wants to set a legal precedent. Like, so nobody has ever like gone after a streamer, right? Like you can do a DMCA request or whatever, like if you really don't want somebody, you know, streaming your stuff, like you can do it without having to sue them. But
I think way more common is is Nintendo doing the like, oh, actually we get all the money from these videos.
Or you're just like not allowed to monetize this or that. It's like, we accidentally, so the composer, Ryan Ike, of the West of Loathing soundtrack, retained the soundtrack rights just as part of his contract.
Oh, so that's why you can only get it on Bandicam.
You can get it on Steam now. The only reason you couldn't buy it on Steam at launch is because we didn't own it. We had to set it up as a Steam product on our page, but had to turn over control of it to Ryan's publisher, and that ended up just taking 2 extra weeks, which sucks because he would have made a bunch of money if the soundtrack had been for sale on Steam there. We started getting people like frantically saying like, hey, I'm getting like warnings from YouTube that I can't monetize this video, and it's like video number 10 in a series of 10 of playing West of Loathing. Like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? We finally tracked it down to like, it was just some mistake that the music publisher had made.
With another third-party company.
Yeah, where it was like suddenly, because they had like registered their copyright on the soundtrack or whatever, it suddenly started flagging stuff that was just had the West of Loathing soundtrack because it was a video of people playing West of Loathing. But you know, they didn't want those things to be taken down or to prevent it from being monetized, so they just fixed it. But you know, all of that stuff is so weird and messy and nebulous, and nobody really wants to be the person that makes it so there's legal precedent that gets set about any of it, because it's all just this like weird house of cards that a lot of people are making a lot of money on right now, and it seems harmless and like.
There's just one thing I want to ask. You seem to know a lot about Skyrim. I just want to know because I agree on the same level. Like the main quest, and like it's like kind of like a culture thing among the Elder Scrolls games, where you just basically ignore the main quest and do whatever you like. But I think I do like also agree that was probably like Skyrim's probably like the biggest selling point. Is that you can just do whatever you want, just ignore everything else. Like especially the especially in the notorious intro, where you have to sit through the
Who doesn't
like,
use a mod to skip that?
and you have to choose between this great struggle between the Empire and the Stormcloaks, which you learn pretty fast who's better to stick with.
You can just start typing in.
If you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I don't remember anything about the differences between any of the factions there.
Okay.
Like they make it it very like emotionally compelling to choose one or the other, but I still don't exactly understand what like if there's a meaningful distinction between the two of them.
Plus the funniest thing to me about Skyrim is that like they set up like in the beginning like, they set up like this great precedence like this struggle of rebels against this oppressive empire, which is what a lot of fantasy universes do. But you find out pretty much immediately that the Stormcloaks are just pretty much racist with swords, and like the Empire is just like your standard empire with its own standard problems. So I don't know.
There's a mod that I really like that's just like a randomized start.
Yeah,
For
I remember
Skyrim,
that.
it's just like, all right, you're just like a blacksmith, and so you just start like in the blacksmith shop with high blacksmithing skill and nothing else, and just like no equipment or whatever. It's like, yeah, just do whatever you want here. Or you're just like out in the middle of the woods hunting with a bow or whatever, and it's like that is way more compelling to me than like whatever's going on that you're being executed for, and then Randy Macho Man Savage shows up as a dragon. Another mod that you have to have installed. Yeah.
I love the Thomas the
Tank.
Oh right.
That's a really good one.
So since you played Breath of the Wild, do you think that is there anything that you would take away from the next game you would make for Breath of the Wild? Because there are a lot of similarities between how Breath of the Wild like starts and how West of Loathing starts too.
It's like because we hadn't. I don't think any of us had played it. I mean, definitely before.
It was out, yeah.
During development, like there are some really good things. I really like how they do scaling monsters in Breath of the Wild, and I would definitely take that system and play with it some.
I don't know that I played enough of it to really understand.
It's complicated. It's not as simple as like count of shrines or Korok seeds or whatever number of blood moons or whatever, which is what you would think. I think like that was sort of my assumption, was that things were just getting harder as I was playing, but it's based on how many of a particular monster you kill. So if you kill a bunch of moblins, they will just get harder. The moblins will get harder.
Do they become like?
They go from blue to black.
Okay, so they change color, so you can tell they're.
Black to
Because that's kind of how like Fallout 3 and probably Skyrim too, right? There's the different like tiers of Draugr, and like whenever you go into like a ruin that has Draugr in it, like the first one that you go into when you're level 1 just has like the basic Draugr, and then maybe one like whatever, I forget the one. There's like eventually like a Death Lord and a whatever. And like then you go like later on you go into one and like most of them are Death Lords, and then there's one that's like an extra tier above that, but it's like the areas have like a difficulty relative to one another, but that's less important than the area's difficulty relative to the player's level. And it doesn't feel weirdly scaled to you like Oblivion did. Like that's a thing that people kind of complained about in Oblivion, but
I love in Breath of the Wild the Korok seed thing. Like I would probably have gotten rid of all of the duplicate versions of all that. I would have had way fewer of them, but I would have had just as many little sort of puzzly interactions out in the environment as possible.
Yeah.
They're great. I like Breath of the Wild does so many things so well. The really short and sweet shrine puzzle dungeons are great, right? Like just as do as many of those as you can think of. They really just knocked it out of the park in terms of just making just really great chunks of content that you can dive into.
we should make it in the next game so every once in a while it rains and you just can't do anything for like 10 minutes.
The rain is so bad. I hate it so much.
What I really liked about the shrines in Breath of the Wild is that like you could make up your own solution to the temples.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
yeah,
like, just going
figuring out to just turn the whole marble maze upside down and just like, oh, screw this maze. So good.
Yeah. One of them was like, oh, just put the ball onto the side of the maze and then somehow
balance it on the edge.
So good.
There was one where there's like a wall around the end and someone like picked up one of the things, put momentum on it, jumped on top of it, like switched to a different item, hit himself with the item, and then like launched over the wall.
Yeah, just it was the most game-breaking thing I ever saw.
But I thought it was really creative. Like I like that openness.
Yeah.
Wasn't there this one puzzle where you had to like connect like these two things with like electricity or whatever?
Wait,
But the person like the person just put down laid down all their metal weapons and just connected.
that's
them.
great.
It was just genius.
That's so good.
But I think for me the one thing that I like, because after you gave me the steam keys, I gave them out. I think I have like one extra or something or whatever. But I was like, because I never played a game where that was. I guess I really described it as like being like Dungeons and Dragon-esque in terms of like how the skill points work and like how all that like affects like what you can do. Until you got me to play Divinity, and I was like, man, that's like way too deep into it.
Right.
But I thought it was really cool how like if I was really high in Moxie or something, then I could just like tell like that goblin or whatever that, hey, there's a thing over there, and he just ignores me. Or if I have Gary, then Gary just talks to him and like leaves me alone or whatever.
That was definitely the like Quest for Glory series influence. Just like, you know, it at first. I definitely always wanted it to be possible to beat the game without fighting, but that became way more important as it went along. And it's like, all right, now I kind of want it to be possible to do everything without fighting.
I mean,
I want it to be possible to do everything without fighting, no matter what class you are, and no matter what partner you have. And so it ended up being like a lot of just like, well, okay, we'll put some stat check in here or whatever, and it's like that'll be fun.
I mean, even the first boss was a quote unquote boss after like spoilers after you cleared the first roadblock of like the dynamite. Like,
yeah.
Also, I didn't realize that you could also get dynamite from clouds after.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. Then I'm like, oh, okay, so now because I guess when I first went through it, I didn't realize that there was all these different paths I could have taken. And I thought that was really cool about it. But like even after like the rock monster shows up, I never fought him. I'm just like, hey, go this way. There's an avalanche coming. Like, run.
You can also go. You can at Fort All Dead. You can put toy skeletons.
Oh
on
yeah,
the,
but you don't get the skeletons until like you go to the other fort.
Yeah, it's well, you can. The skeletons are one of the early ranches, but I think you have to have a pretty high lock picking or something to get into them. But yeah, you can have the skeletons from Fort All Dead go and just ruin the goblin camp, and then you can just get the dynamite for free down there without doing it. I think you can also send them to destroy the circus. I don't remember do you get the dynamite if you destroy the circus? I think you just get.
You get it from the Bob dude.
You can, yeah. If you do the circus the normal way, if you actually do the quest, you get it from him.
I don't think it's in the safe, but it could be. I forget.
There's something in the safe.
Yeah.
If you.
I forget what it is.
Yeah, I don't remember. But
Oh, it was
that's
like,
the thing a lot of people don't find because you have to go back. You have to go back down to Butterfield Ranch to get those skeletons after your.
Yeah, I remember like when my first playthrough happened, I went like all the way to the end, and I'm like backtracking, and then the circus suddenly shows up. I'm like, there's still more? Like what?
No.
I like even on like my because my third playthrough was hard mode. My second playthrough was like, okay, so like the snake, the infinite snake string that shows up didn't show up for me until like way into the playthrough. But when I finally got to the circus, I'm like, oh, that's how you get like the last shop or whatever. And then like when I finally walked in, I'm like, it's 5,000 meat. How is anyone supposed to get this in the game?
Yeah.
How much do you, or during building the game, did you play it or play test it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's the fastest you can beat?
I was way faster at it than most people because I kind of knew where everything was more than most people did. So yeah, I mean, I got to the point where I was doing playthroughs in like an hour and a half or 2 hours.
My playthroughs were like 60 hours.
Because I was fewer.
Yeah, I was doing way fewer, but I was doing a bunch of I was just taking a ton of notes and trying I'm the guy that goes through and like tries every conversation option. I try every way to do this, and I'll reset my character because I can control my flag states. I can like change it back to a way as before the conversation, see how it plays out differently, and then trying to just hit every single interactable node. So those were I did 2 or 3 of those playthroughs.
And I did maybe 10 or 12 full game playthroughs where I would be like, all right, this time I'm going to be this class with this partner, and I want to do no fights, but I want to finish the necromancer chain and become the necromancer, and then do this solution to the bridge puzzle. So I would just have these explicit goals and just make sure that all of those things were possible, sort of no matter what combination of choices that you made in the beginning. the ones that were the most fun for me were like, okay, what's like the least appropriate class to try to do this weird thing in, and making sure that it's still possible to do in like a reasonable amount of time, and not like just completely incomprehensible to do. So yeah, we did. I mean,
we had like 100 pages.
Yeah. It was hard because like you couldn't play through it that many times after it was done because it wasn't done until real soon before we launched. So it was like, a lot of those early playthroughs were like, and then whatever happens at the end of the game.
Yeah, we had content lock about a month before launch, and then at that point, none of the like movie house stuff had been done. I don't know if you've gotten into the game or anything, but there's like
I spent the last like month after we had already sent the game out for review. That went out with just a sorry reviewers, ending cutscene is not done yet.
When they got to the theater at the end.
Yeah, it was just like okay, my bad. Love Zach.
Yeah.
And so I spent the last month just like making all of those scenes, but yeah, it was fine. But it was because, like, the train sequence, which is like the ending if you don't do one of the ending shortcuts, that was done.
Is an ending short? Okay.
You can, if you give Norton a crown instead of doing the train, instead of doing the train sequence. There's a bunch of things you can take him that just like it's just you win as soon as you get to first go.
It's like
there's
4 or 5 different
4 crowns that you can find in various places.
They're all relatively hard to get.
Yeah, they're all kind of out of the way, but yeah.
That's like one of the like, shortcut non-combat ways to get through.
Yeah, all of the, if you watch it, there's like 6-minute speed runs now on YouTube, and
what is the one that they go for?
I think they always do the turnip one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, see, I never found, like, I still haven't done it yet, but I always kept the turnip because I'm like, okay, there's a reason they dropped it at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And when we got to, like, the server plating, dude, I'm like, I can plate this, but I keep forgetting to, like, pay him, like, the whatever meat.
Yeah. That's...
Okay.
So
we stop you from. We make that way more expensive in hard mode because it just lets you like that's by far the easiest way. That's by far the easiest way to skip the ending sequence. The ending sequence is not that hard.
Could not figure out why it was so expensive. It's all the turn out.
So, do you feel like there was or was there really anything in the game that you didn't know was going to be a potential interaction that players discovered? I know that with the game that has dialogue and scripted paths, it's not necessarily as common.
Right.
But were there any really emergent behavior from your players?
Not really, because it doesn't really lend itself. There's not a lot of really simulation-y aspects to it.
West of Loathing has a lot more of that kind of stuff because we've made so many systems and then made so many exceptions to those systems over the years that people then will go and they'll like take 2 very disparate things and like put them together and be like, oh, this works in a very unexpected way.
I would like to be able to do it. And the engine ended up so much more powerful than we were anticipating. Like, the programmer just was really good.
Yeah.
Like, the guy who was the programmer for West of Loathing was also the lead gameplay programmer on Infamous 2. Like, we got a really good deal on a really good programmer who was just, like, sort of retired from AAA development, so was really good at working with teams, but also, like, liked us and was real easy to work with. And so, yeah, every feature that I requested, he would implement it in like the most amazing way. This was like exactly according to spec and is also capable of 10 times more stuff than you imagined that it would be capable of. And so, like, we could probably, with the existing engine, do the kind of like Paper Mario style thing where like enemies are walking around on the map, and if you get close in a room, and if you get close to them, they'll notice you and run towards you, and then that's how a fight starts. But you could sneak past them. Like, we could just do all of that if we spent the time on it. And so like it would be fun to do more kind of immersive sim stuff, so that there could be more like. Because like I feel like that's always the goal for like somebody who's like thoughtful about video games, is you want to build systems that create like emergent player stories that are like, oh man, that is entertaining in a way that wasn't me. Like, that wasn't authored by me, that fell out of the systems that I created. Like, that is like by far the most satisfying experience that you can have.
Well, it's like heat signature. Like, so Tom Francis is a friend of ours, and he made Gunpoint and Heat Signature, and so like a lot of the sort of best things out of that are just all the player stories about like how things unfold in that game. And it's all systems and interconnections of complicated like weapons and ship systems and stuff like that, and like people just find all these really fun ways that they can get things to interact.
I mean, I think one thing that I do like about like West of Loathing, I mean, the last speaker we had, or 2 speakers ago that we had, was talking about how his game was like the story was randomly generated, and like he would like when to follow like a general story arc, he would have parts that were always like high tension, so there would be like a flow to it, but. And it would feel like the player was sort of creating their own thing based on that. It had an original experience. But the thing with West of Loathing is that because there's so many options, it still feels like it's a personal experience.
And that's you just have to make a ton of content.
And how did you guys track all that? Was that like a giant Excel sheet? No. Was it like Post-its on the wall with like pins and string?
Not even that.
Not really. I mean, we had a big spreadsheet that was like every sort of room, every like room in the game divided up by like the actual areas that they were, and then a big list of like checkpoints, like is the layout done, is the art done, is the scripting done, is the writing done, and then there were a couple of columns that were like, are there a couple of pointless jokes in this area? Like if not, there should be some. Is there some thing that breadcrumbs you to another area? Like if not, there probably should be in most places. There should be something that leads to some other place. Is there? What would that? I guess that was basically it.
Those are the
there were some internals of like, has this gone through like primary QA for script completeness and stuff. But yeah, I mean that was partly like how we maintained the like density of stuff, is by just like, yeah, there was kind of a checklist, like all of these areas should have like the following actual reasons to exist.
So what about the Big Apple?
That was just a joke that came out of a conference call, and it was like, I bet I could do that in a couple hours, and so it was like.
How's your text on the back end? Like, kind of a more technical question. Like,
it's all just flat text files, scripting language that we just. We're not using any sort of complicated tools. It's just writing out the conversations and the sort of stops in the conversation and the options. It's all just handle that, and then that gets parsed.
It gets so we have a bunch of like back-end web tools that we use to store all of the game data, and that gets exported as just a single giant JSON file that gets imported into the Unity engine, and then the Unity engine like builds the world around that and all the interactions and stuff. So what's real nice is that when we're working on it, we can be playing in the actual game, make some changes to a script, just hit R to reload data in the game, and then we're just playing whatever we just typed into there without us actually having to have a Unity editor open. So it's way faster than if we were building that stuff.
And we don't have to make new builds.
Yeah.
For 90% of the stuff that we're changing. That's one of these features.
Yeah. And we had the scripting language that we used, we had built for Kingdom of Loathing years ago, and it just had more and more features added onto it. And then with West of Loathing, it just quintupled in complexity and the stuff that it was capable of doing. Like,
we can now trigger animations, and we can trigger sound effects.
Yeah, and like it's the same scripting language is used for all the combat logic. Like we could just completely change the way combat worked without having to change the executable at all. Like all of that just lives in designer accessible script data. We did actually completely change the way that some fundamental aspects of combat worked, and the programmer didn't have to change anything. Like we just did it all in the scripts that were associated with skills and stuff. It's good.
Where did silly walking come from?
I don't. It wasn't supposed to be nearly as in depth as it was. Like I don't remember like.
You said to our animator, "Hey, can you make some silly walks?"
Yeah.
And you came back with 20 or something.
Yeah, 20 that were way better than anything that I had anticipated, and like.
Anytime he didn't have anything assigned to him, he just made more.
Yeah. It turned out to be.
Some with the lanterns specifically too.
Right, well, and that was like even relatively late into development. We're like, oh, these don't work with lanterns equipped. So can you make a bunch specifically for the game?
That was super good.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. I mean, Kingdom of Loathing didn't have any animation, so it was all sort of new territory for us, and we got lucky. We had met when we were working on the word game. We had met West, the guy who did all the animation for that, and he happened to be available when we were looking to hire somebody for West of Loathing, and he just has a really remarkable comic timing that just added a ton, and was really able to just make the art move the way that you would expect it to, and just real fortunate to have found somebody that we could work with so easily on that.
Was there a lot of editing involved with the writing? Like you had to go back and you write stuff like this joke isn't or
No, almost none. It's because Riff, the other writer, I mean, I guess I would have been the one editing it, so I wasn't going to edit my own stuff. I just did it right in the first place.
I think my favorite passage has to be the one of the pickle factory. Where it's
oh my god, yeah.
And then you're suddenly going into the mind of this old factory worker.
Right.
And then you get the puzzle in it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I would sketch out what a given set of text was going to be, and then Riff would just go in and write it later. I mean, we would fix typos and stuff, but and Kevin did a lot of editing when Riff would write passages of stuff that was too tall for a screen full of text or whatever. We would put a break in or whatever. But generally, we've been doing this for so long that we can just very quickly get stuff in a consistent tone, and it's usually it's not it was never okay, this week you need to write this area, and this area. It was always sort of well, whatever you have an idea for, as long as you're getting this stuff done, write things as you think of funny things to put into all these things that need to be written, and so I think that worked out real well.
I feel like the editing that does happen is going back and adding jokes to areas that were done, but now you're oh, I thought of something funny here, or whatever. So it's mostly additive and not so much subtractive or changing things necessarily. There was one joke that you made that I did not like, and you were very resistant to editing it. The Cup of Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain it? Because
So there's a cup of coffee, and you drink it, and it said, what is the?
So let's say your character's name is Hank. It says, you drink the cup of Joe, and then the button that you press to respond says, my name's Hank. And it doesn't make any sense, because the joke is that you think that the game thinks that your name is Joe, and you're correcting it.
Yeah.
But that's not what the narrator would say if they thought your name was Joe. So that was Kevin's objection to it.
Yeah.
A lot of people report it as a bug. I mean, that's the danger with a conceptual joke, is that what was the other one it was a passage about somebody finding themselves out of a job but in of an opportunity, which is non-grammatical, but it's sort of that's a joke about, hey, aren't prepositions weird? That one also gets reported as a typo a lot, but that one just italicized the part that people would report as a typo, and then they had to think about it because it was italicized. They're oh, okay, I guess I get it. I guess that counts as a joke.
Double down. Double down. If you believe in it, double down. Yeah.
But there wasn't much stuff like that. There was one thing where Riff had written a bunch of stuff about a fart, and I changed it all to a burp, because I didn't want there to be explicit fart jokes in the game. And there's plenty of oblique fart jokes, but I didn't want the word fart to appear in the game.
What's a butt for?
Yeah. No, that one was fine. Because that's like about something.
Or the hot Doug, like the hot Doug thing and the hot.
Oh yeah.
So like that's an example of like probably like wasted development hours. I spent probably 3 or 4 hours making sure that like it handles every case where your character is named Doug, your character is named Dog. Like if you go in like and, like I've had one person like actually say that they've like specifically made a character to play through to that point just to see what happens. And there's special cases for all of those.
We'd initially. One of one of the ideas that I had that I wanted to be able to do in there was to let you participate in the invention of the hot dog, but let you name it, and then have the sign on the store change to whatever it was that you said. But then I didn't want there to be screenshots of the game where it said whatever loot thing people typed, and also like figuring out how to like make sure they did it in a thing that you could pluralize by adding an S to it or whatever. So we just ended up like scaling that back a little bit, but it's